Hello everyone, my name is Emily Mo, the Director General of PACMUN. Joining me today is our special guest, Gary Locke. He was the former Washington Governor, former U.S. Secretary of Commerce, and former U.S. Ambassador to China. So, Mr. Locke, why don't you start by introducing yourself?
Well, you've actually introduced me. Yes, I am the former governor of Washington State from 1997 to 2005. And then in 2009, I was appointed by President Barack Obama to be U.S. Secretary of Commerce. I did that for 2.5 years, and then he appointed me and asked me to become the U.S. Ambassador to China. So I served in China from 2011 to 2014. And then took a few years off, and then most recently served as the interim president of Bellevue College, the largest open access institution in the state of Washington.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. So starting with a question about your career. So we understand you have a wide variety of different experiences. So what position or experience do you think stood out the most to you, and why?
Well, actually, each different position had unique challenges and activities and responsibilities. So each one is very, very different. As governor, first I started off in the state legislature, served there for about 11 years and rose to become chairman of the budget writing committee. So on behalf of the House of Representatives and the Democrats in the House of Representatives, I was responsible for proposing all the spending for the state of Washington, which covered prisons, environment, health, colleges, universities, our public school system, law enforcement, and human services. Then I became King County Executive, in which I was the Chief Administrative Officer for this entire metropolitan Seattle area, which makes up about a third of the population of the state of Washington. From there, I became governor. Let me just say that being governor was a great experience. Traveled the state, really got to visit the small towns and the people from the farming sectors of eastern Washington to our urban areas like Seattle, and even to our forested areas like the Olympic Peninsula, fishing villages and farming towns, manufacturing centers. So it was a great, great experience. And we focused on really trying to be delivering more efficient, effective services to the people of the state of Washington, helping them realize their dreams and their aspirations for themselves and their families. When I became Secretary of Commerce, of course, that was a time in which the country was just coming out of a great recession, a huge recession, where all the banks and many institutions had failed. And so the job that President Obama had for all of us was getting America back on its feet. And so one of the things that I focused on was helping American companies sell their made-in-USA goods and services to other countries around the world, because the more that American companies sell their made-in-USA goods and services, the more employees they need, and that means jobs for the American people. And then later on, when I went to China, it was to help Americans, American companies, and American individuals who are doing business or living in China be successful. Helping American students if they got into trouble, opening doors for American companies to create partnerships in China, but also to sell their products and services in China. American products and services are highly valued and in great demand in China. So it was an opportunity for a win-win situation, helping the Chinese people meet their needs and dreams and aspirations, but also helping American companies sell their highly valued products and services into China, which then creates jobs for the American people back home in the United States, but also helping Chinese people come to the United States as tourists, as students, as business people looking for investment in America. So each of the different major roles, ambassador, commerce secretary, governor, had totally different responsibilities, but each was very, very fulfilling. It was an opportunity to serve and to serve our citizens and to improve their lives.
Yeah, that definitely resonates with PACMUN's message as well as we work with the community. Okay, so speaking of your experience in China, so you worked with a lot of nations that had vastly different views from the United States. So what skills do you think you gained from dealing with other delegates and dealing with the conflicts and disruptions that arose from those experiences?
Well, certainly that came to play when I was a U.S. ambassador to China. America has very different political system, history, values compared to China. But down deep, the people have the same aspirations and dreams to have a better life for themselves and their children and future generations, to have a job, good paying job, to put food on the table, and to have good health. Those are universal values of people all around the world. Our governments may be different. We have different political systems and different laws. And so the challenge is to try to find ways in which the interests of all these different countries can be met while still focusing on the needs of the people. Certainly dealing with the Chinese government was not easy because, that's their country. We're all visitors in their country. We need to respect their laws, but we also feel that, as Americans, for instance, we value human rights, we value democracy, we value transparency, openness of government, and the ability of citizens to shape and influence the government. China is much more authoritarian, not a democratic country, and so these values will conflict. But we need, as we try to do business, as we try to help Americans, as we try to help Chinese, we need to focus on people-to-people relations. So that, because the more that people understand each other, the fewer the conflicts and the tension. Second of all, we need to be very clear about our values, and we can't run away from our values, whether it's on human rights or democracy. And we need to be open about our views of what's happening in other countries, just as other countries express their views about what's happening in America.
Yeah, definitely. So also working with other countries, there's a lot of different cultural nuances and different cultures that you have to work with. So what do you say to our high school viewers with working with other people, especially other people of different ethnicities and nationalities?
Well, first of all, a former Prime Minister of Great Britain, Tony Blair, said that diplomacy first starts with more people-to-people exchange. The more that people visit each other's countries, the more that we study each other's culture, history, political systems, I think the more we're able to break down the barriers and then be able to come together to reach consensus or to work on issues and interests of common concern. For instance, China and America have big differences in terms of trade, government, rule of law, human rights. But the more that we can actually focus on our areas of common interests, the more we're going to be able to work together. For instance, climate change. China emits more greenhouse gases than any other country in the world, but they also have 4 times the population of America. America produces more greenhouse gases per person than any other country in the world. And so the world is looking for leadership from both China and the United States to come together to solve climate change. Because if America makes incredible strides in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and China does nothing, our efforts will mean nothing. If China makes substantial reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, but America does very little, all the sacrifices that China makes will mean nothing as well. So we've got to work together. And the same thing is true for fighting global terrorism. We're trying to stop other countries from developing nuclear weapons or finding cures for some of the most dreaded diseases. The world is looking for leadership from both China and the United States working together to solve some of these global issues. And so the more that we understand each other, understand our differences and set them aside, we can still try to resolve those differences separately, but it should not stop us from also forming partnerships with China or any other country to tackle these global issues.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. I hope that our viewers can also use those skills while in committee and debating those global issues. Okay, so now we're going to switch topics a little bit back to your term as governor. So you were the first Chinese American governor in the U.S. So actually a lot of our audience is also Asian and Chinese American. So what do you think your experience was like pioneering this field in politics?
Well, I was very proud and very lucky and very fortunate to be the first Chinese American governor in U.S. history and the first Asian American on the mainland of the United States. Hawaii, with a large Asian population, has had several AAPI governors, but I was certainly the first on the mainland. And it's a great source of pride, but also a enormous responsibility as well. Because the reality is that we look at how others who are trying to break the glass ceiling to see how well they do, and if they, have a bad reputation, if they have a very poor public image, unfortunately, it makes it difficult for others to follow and to succeed, or even attempt to enter into the same field. I was very lucky here in the state of Washington because we've had other Asian Americans be elected to office who had a great reputation. And so I remember when I was running for the state legislature, knocking on doors, asking people to vote for me, introducing myself. They said, "Oh yeah, I remember so-and-so, he was on the Seattle City Council, or he was a state legislature many years ago. Yeah, he did a really nice job, or she was really good, and I have no problem voting for an Asian American." Because we all want to be judged on our own merits, but the reality is that sometimes we're lumped together, and if people do an outstanding job, then there's a positive image of Asian Americans or African Americans or Latinos. That's unfortunate to be stereotyped and to be lumped together, but still people have these impressions. And so I was lucky that there have been many other AAPIs who have held office before me, and they had a positive reputation, which made it easier for me to run for office. And that's why I also wanted to create a positive image and have a good reputation. If I could be a really respected, effective governor, then perhaps that will inspire others and make it easier for them to run for office and win.
So do you think if a student didn't have these lucky circumstances as you, do you think there are any beliefs or anything that you believe in that will help them push those boundaries or stay motivated in pushing and making you a more equitable space for all people?
Well, I very much encourage young people to run for office and to get involved in government because, quite frankly, if we really care about the issues affecting our community, our society, we have every right, indeed a responsibility, to be at the table to help set the policies that affect everyone, including our own community. Asian Americans help build this country. America is really a land of foreigners, whether we're first generation or 10th generation, whether our ancestors came here on the Mayflower, on a slave vessel from Africa, or on a steamer from Asia. And each wave of newcomers has brought their culture, their religion, their language, their customs, their ideas and perspectives that have really enabled America to be the dynamic, innovative, vibrant country that it is. So I really believe that it's the diversity of America that really makes us great. So I encourage people to run for office and to be active in government. And because I think we bring our cultural values and our customs of our ethnic heritage to the table, which enriches the debate, the discussion, the ideas, and the analysis of legislation or policies that are being considered.
Yeah, sounds awesome. And then for our final question regarding yourself and your career, so with all your accomplishments, many may think that it's hard to believe you also have personal life and all your hobbies. So what are some of your hobbies, and how do you balance it with your work life and politics and just your jobs in general?
Well, I think that this is true for whatever job you have, whether it's in government or outside of government. Family comes first. I have 3 kids, and they grow up. They're all grown up now, and they've grown up so quickly, too fast. And I remember when I was first elected, before I was even sworn in, the new governors attended a new governor's school. There were about 5 or 6 of us new governors that year. And we went to Atlanta, Georgia, and the existing governors put on a seminar for all of us. And it was, and the other governors, the incumbents who were the so-called faculty, they were both Democrats and Republicans. And they said, you know, you're going to be invited to hundreds of events, over 100 events for every single week. There's no way you can say yes to all of them. And you're going to have to pick and choose. And they said, you're probably, you know, even if you did 2 a night, 3 a night, that's maybe 21 or 20 or so per week. And you're still going to be saying no to over 80. And so you have to set limits and set priorities of the type of events that you're going to be going to. But if you have kids, are you going to remember those events that you went to, those banquets, those dinners, 15, 20 years later? Or will you remember your son's first t-ball game, or your child's first piano recital, or ballet, or first day in school? So set limits on how many days you're gone from the family, and set those priorities first. And so we actually set limits on how many nights a week I would be away from the kids when I was first elected as governor. And I know that CEOs of other corporations too do the same thing. They'll say no to these invitations because, no, going to my daughter's piano recital or ballet recital, or my son's t-ball game, or musical performance and concert is more important than work. Because those memories of your children and those activities with your children and family will last you a lifetime. And some of these events, as important as they might be and as special as they might be, you know, will you really remember those, and what's really most important? So work-life balance is incredibly important. Other hobbies include, I like playing golf. I also like gardening and landscaping and doing some home repairs. I really enjoy fixing things around the house.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, and that sounds like a great value. And thank you again for taking your time to do this interview with us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, and then so moving on to our next session, targeted more towards our high school viewers. So a lot of PACMUN's attendees may be interested in diplomacy and government. So what do you think are some things that people can do to get involved at the high school level?
Well, obviously, being active in student government and just the activities of the school, whether it's chess or sports, or even, you know, I know that some schools, high schools, actually have organizations that go out into the community to do community service, whether it's reading to kids or going to nursing homes and senior centers just to help out and to talk with the retirees and the seniors. I think that's very, very important. Be active in your school, whether it's in music, performance, local government, school government, class activities, to even community service projects. I think it's very important that students not just focus on academics, but really have a well-rounded life.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And moving on to another question, it's a bit more controversial, but feel free to let me know if you're uncomfortable answering it. But based on your perspective as the past Bellevue College interim president and principal, and also the former governor, what are your thoughts on the new change in affirmative action, and how do you think it will impact our high school students today?
Well, I'm a believer in affirmative action. I was a product of affirmative action. I was admitted to Yale University from high school. At that time, there were almost no people of color, almost no students of color whatsoever. And most of the students at Yale University came from the private schools, primarily from the East Coast. And so Yale wanted to diversify its student body with students of color, students from public schools, and students from the West Coast. So I consider myself a threefer. But still, I had to take the same exams. I still had to write the same papers as anyone else. So for me, affirmative action means taking a hard look at people you might not otherwise consider, but they still have to meet the qualifications. So for me, affirmative action has never meant quotas, has never meant lowering standards or giving preferences to people, but really taking a hard look at people you might not otherwise consider, who, you know, not quite in the view or the lens that the company or school would normally look at. So affirmative action also applies to businesses. Really taking a hard look at trying to diversify your workforce, your management team, or for a college or institution, your student body, by looking and reaching out and recruiting and advertising and promoting the opportunities at your work or institution, but not lowering standards. Because I don't want to feel less qualified going to Yale or any other institution or going to a job than anybody else. So I was very disappointed in the decision by the U.S. Supreme Court in its recent ruling. But it will make it harder for colleges and universities to diversify, but I still think that diversity is a strength and a value. Diversity of students, including international students, students that come from the rural parts of our society, people who come from refugee camps, or people who are coming from a migrant family, people from low income, students, just from all different walks of life. They enrich the discussion in the classroom for everyone else. They demonstrate a perspective, and they bring that perspective into the discussion. That, oh wow, I hadn't thought about that before. Wow, that's a unique way of looking at things. So it really benefits everyone, and it elevates, enhances the quality of education on our campuses. That's why I believe in affirmative action, without lowering standards, without having quotas, simply taking a hard look at people you might not otherwise consider.
So do you think there's going to be maybe like affirmative action will come back, or like any moves that colleges would do, or do you just encourage high school students to continue like working hard or anything like that?
Well, I think that a lot of these colleges and universities have a hard time choosing who to admit. People have 4-point grade averages or 4.2 grade averages, and they have high test scores. Of course, people are getting away from test scores too. So it's not going to, a 3.9 might be actually a higher grade point in reality than a 4.1 at a different school. Different schools have different grading systems too. It also depends on the type of courses you took. Did you really take a whole bunch of advanced placement courses? So a 3.9 at one place with all these different courses that a student took might be very different than a 4.0 at another school with the courses that student took. So I've never believed in just looking simply at saying, oh, the person with the highest test scores should be admitted, the person with the highest GPA should be admitted. Because quite frankly, when you look at the elite colleges, and this applies even to the top colleges, universities within the state systems as well, everybody looks the same. So how should a college or university choose their students? They look at background, they look at their activities. Are they active in school? Are they involved in sports? Are they active in the community outside of school? What type of a family background do they come from? What are their perspectives that they bring, and their life experiences that they will bring to the university that will enrich the discussion and the education for everyone else?
Yeah, it definitely sounds, it's a pressing issue, but it is what it is.
Now, many colleges and universities, because of the ban on affirmative action, for instance, even within the state of Washington, they have gotten around it. They still are able to diversify their student body, but they do it by asking people to write essays. They look at the background of the student. It's, University of Washington has so many students that have 4.0 grade averages. So how do you differentiate between all these different students? They're looking at what these students are doing. Are they active in school? Are they active in the community? Do they volunteer on political campaigns? What are their hobbies and their interests?
Yeah, thank you so much for that fresh take. I bet people really value what you say because they'll value your experiences. So that was amazing. And then for our final question, it's coming directly from the viewers. So do you think it's possible for an individual to enter different fields exiting high school. So, for example, healthcare, education, or just something that's not directly like political science and then a 4-year law degree. Do you think someone can enter different fields and then eventually enter the political field and still have as many experiences as you do today?
Well, I really think that it's important for students when they go to college to take what we call a liberal arts education, to focus on getting a good background in all different subject matters, and not focus and specialize in any particular area too soon. Students that even want to become a doctor and who have to take the mandatory so-called pre-med courses in college should also take courses in literature and the arts and the social sciences. I know that when I was going to Yale, the students that were pre-med majors, who were planning on going into medicine, took the pre-med courses, but they actually majored in French. Students who were hoping to go to law school, many of them majored in philosophy or math or biology. It's important to have that well-rounded education, because the value of American colleges and universities, which is why American colleges have more international students than any other country in the world, is because of our emphasis on critical thinking, on analytical thinking, not memorization. Because now with the advent of the internet, you can look up something that you forgot.
Yeah.
All right. So or even AI. Your ability to communicate, your ability to analyze and come up with solutions. Those are the tools of lifelong learning. As technology changes, whether it's in how you fix a car, or how you can build a home, or how you do plumbing, you need to be able to learn these things on your own and analyze these things on your own. That's why having a well-rounded education is so important. And then if you're even interested in eventually going into government, if you look at the people who are members of the state legislature or the city councils throughout our country, or even the members of Congress, they come from a huge variety of backgrounds. Some are lawyers, some are former teachers, some are former business people, some are artists, some are musicians and actors. So don't think that if you want to go into government, you have to major in political science or government or things like that. No, if you're interested in going into government eventually, either as a community activist, a volunteer on a board or commission, or elected official, school board member, city council, state legislature, governor, member of Congress, it's just being active in your community and caring about your community and bringing your ideas from whatever profession you have into the job. If you look at our Washington State Legislature, most of the people have a government background or majored in political science or government when they were in college. Many of them are teachers, accountants, farmers, cosmetologists, dentists, human service advocates, social workers. And so what the common thread, they simply care about their community.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And then finally, if you have any last words or anything you want to leave to our viewers before they move on to their future careers or future paths, or anything you want to say?
Well, with our society today, whatever profession or occupation someone may have or enter into out of high school or college, it's probably going to change. It's not going to be your profession, your occupation for the rest of your life. I mean, a lot of our parents and grandparents worked at one company for their entire lives. They worked at the Boeing company for 30 years. They worked at the Ford Motor Factory for 25 years, or they worked for IBM or a company for forever. No longer. You might be working for one company for 5 years, and then you work for another company for 8 years. You may start off as an accountant, and then you become a social worker, or you start off as a social worker, then you start your own business, or then you go into the arts and the creative arts, and then, or you may start off as a dancer, musician, an actor, or actress, and then you form your own business, and then you go into social media or something like that. I mean, people are constantly now changing professions and jobs. So in order to be prepared for those opportunities that come along, it's important to have a well-rounded education, to be grounded in analytical thinking, and to take a variety of courses in your college years, because who knows, you may think that you want to go into law, and then you take a course from a really exciting, popular professor or instructor on campus, and you say, wow, I'm going to go into history instead, or I'm going to go into the arts instead. So you have to be open to all the different possibilities that life is going to present.
Thank you so much, Mr. Locke. You definitely said a lot of things that resonate with our viewers, and we really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you.
My pleasure.
So thank you so much for listening, and we hope you learned something.